Here we are at Live from the Heartland. This is Katy Hogan. We're joined by our wonderful guests and my co-host today, Michael James.
Katy, I'm so glad to be here, and thanks for driving me all the way downtown in that slushy kind of weather.
It was really not bad.
I'm only making a joke.
Okay. Well, we want to say get well to our co-host Tom Clark, who's under the weather today. We all are all under the weather, but we're able to get out and about. Actually, today's a good day to get out and about. It's December 17th. You know, that crazy season where people spend money that they don't have on junk they don't need.
It's the truth.
Well, it is the truth, and I struggle each year with each year with this season because I have familial expectational gyro in my head that I can never quite meet because I don't have money.
In our family, a few years back, we just said, okay, not everybody's giving everybody a present anymore.
Yeah, well, whatever the arrangement is, I never quite. I'm always pretty stressed, wanting to paint pictures or do something like bake bread and.
Well, we are entering the holiday season, and it's a mixed bag.
Well, Kevin Mo was just talking about revolution and sacrifice and buckle up.
And stand up and be strong.
Stand up and be strong,
Speaking
my fellow Americans.
Standing up and being strong. What's going on in North Carolina?
Nothing good, man. Nothing effing good. Sorry. The guy who got beat, let me say this again, he got beat.
That would be Pat McCrory.
Right. Who we're not going to call names because it's the radio station, but boy, is he ever everything you'd ever want to say negative. He is engineering, along with other Republicans, they have engineered to strip the governor of his rights.
That's the incoming governor.
Yeah, the incoming governor is Roy Cooper. He just won. He's a Democrat. The Republicans are upset. So they're going to take his power if they can beforehand. And, you know, North Carolina is already on the record, along with about 20 other states, with incredible voter suppression BS. One of the most underreported stories of November 8th is the voter suppression that has swept the country since the wipeout of the Voting Rights Act. People, there are so many things that you should need to stand up for right now. Just choose one. Just choose one. I believe there will be a march today in Federal Plaza. I'm pretty sure. I don't have the details on it. But the electors meet on Monday.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Katy? Because we were talking about it in the car coming down, and I was wondering if the country was going to get really riled up about possible, I mean more than possible, Russian involvement in the election.
Well, I think the country is riled up. I think it is very riled up. But what we do not have a real strong history of, certainly with those who are alive today, is rising up effectively. And I think that people are afraid of it. We've talked about this before on the show. People are like, oh, why are people in the streets disrupting traffic? Well, that's what protest is about. It's supposed to disrupt stuff. So I'm not exactly sure how the inaugural weekend is going to pan out. I know an awful lot of people are planning on disrupting that, but I also know that we're bringing in an oligarch, and they generally use a big fist. So I'm really concerned about.
Well, I think there's real reason to be concerned about the direction of the country, and people were clearly upset about their own situation, even after a lot of progress in many ways over the last 8 years. And we had sort of a protest vote that puts us in a really weird position. And
yeah.
I wonder if a lot of the Republicans who did vote for Trump and others, if they're happy, or if they're starting to feel like this is not what they got in for.
Well, it's just hard to imagine, given yet the most recent announcement of his appointee. What was the one this week that was so awful.
Well, the ambassador to Israel.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, he keeps going for the jugular on these appointments, and it's so obvious and it's so awful. I'm not sure if he's kind of hoping he gets kicked out, which everybody thinks.
Yeah, well,
right?
we hope. We'll see.
Yeah.
Let's move to sports a little bit.
Oh, sports, sure.
In the Reader this week, Ben Jarofsky has an article on Craig Hodges. Basically, Hodges, who was a guest on the Live from the Heartland show, and you can find that if you go to youtube.com/heartlandmedia. Where Craig
When was that? A couple of years ago?
It's probably a couple of years ago. I'm sorry I don't have the exact date, but Craig clearly feels like he was blacklisted from the NBA, and he was like a very, very great player. So I think that's worth reading.
I think the correct thing is to call it whitelisted.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm just saying, we should stop using that term to mean something that actually white people have done to black people.
Okay, I like that. That's Katy making progress here.
I'm sick of white people doing junk to black people. But anyway, if she gets here, we do have Accio Bejas, author, novelist, poet, and former Chicagoan. If we don't, you're going to hear a lot of Michael and I talking to Jerry Harris, author of Global Capitalism and the Crisis of Democracy, and you're also going to get a little extra music from Ken Tucker, who's here live because he's performing tonight at the Red Line Tap, along with our good friend Jan James, who's going to coordinate our Christmas show next week at the Heartland.
Along with Nicholas Barron and Corky Sequel. So it's going to be a sing-along. We hope you all come out for the Live from the Heartland. Actually, we'll be broadcasting live next week at the Heartland Cafe.
That's right. That's right. So,
all right.
The other thing I just wanted to mention, your show at the Heartland, which is a photo exhibit. It's up now through January 15th.
Actually, I have two shows. I have a big weekend coming up in January. On the 13th, I open a show at Yuri Eichen Gallery on Friday night, the 13th. It's called Onward, Movements, Activists, Politics, and Politicians. And I will close my show at the Heartland called Home in the Heartland on Sunday afternoon, the 15th, which will also be the eve of my 75th birthday. So hopefully we're all going to eat a lot of cake. So that's it, and that's it on the photo stuff.
All right, so we do have all three of our guests, and so let's move right to our first guest, shall we, Michael?
All right, so we're talking now with Jerry Harris, and he has a new book out, Global Capitalism and the Crisis of Democracy. How did you come up with that title and even that topic before we even elected this guy?
It was so obvious. Well, I'm so happy to be here, Mike. Rise up and be angry would be a good slogan for this.
Yeah, but we're going to move it to a new thing called RUA, R-U-A, the rising of us all. Time is right.
So, Jerry, you've been a friend of Michael and the extended circle of radical activity in Chicago for a long, long time. One of the reasons you come from it naturally.
Yeah.
Son of the great photographer Sid Harris.
Right.
Who fought in Spain.
Who did fight in Spain. God
against
bless
the
him.
fascists.
Yep, yeah, a proud thing to be able to say.
He'd be on the barricades today, I'm sure.
Yes, he absolutely would. You look a lot like him. I didn't know him younger, but I bet he looks like you when he was younger. So what is the Global Studies Association that you are National Secretary of, and what's their activity?
Oh, well, the Global Studies Association is mainly a progressive, academic association of people who are studying the effects and dynamics of globalization. And we put it together about 17 years ago when basically guys like Friedman at the New York Times and these cheerleaders of globalization were the only voices out there. And so we thought, hey, we have to become critical of this stuff and take it seriously and look at what's going on in the world. So,
but is everything about globalization to be critiqued? Well, of course everything is to be critiqued, whether or not it ever is. But is there anything positive that comes out of globalization for any of the nations?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at China and some of the countries in the South, there's obviously a very rapidly growing middle class. At the same time, in those countries, there's more and more people becoming dispossessed. So it's both negative and positive in that sense for some of those countries. But I think overall, the great winners have been the 1% and the 1/10 of 1%, including the 1/10 of 1% in China. And the great losers have been the bottom 90% throughout the world, including right here in the United States.
We're all wondering when the 1.5 or 2% have won enough.
Never. It's never enough, right?
Evidently, which is very hoggish of them, I would say. Yes, go ahead.
Jerry, what do you mean by global capitalism, and what does it have to do with a crisis in democracy?
Yeah, well, I think most people, when they think about corporations in particular, right, they think of them as national champions. General Electric, General Motors, Ford. We all grew up with, at least those of us here at the table,
us older
older guys. What's good for GM is good for America. We remember that one.
We sure do.
And that's because most of their assets and their sales and their employment was in the United States. That's no longer true for any of these corporations. Right. They're all involved in global assembly lines. They're all involved in massive employment around the world, research and development around the world. And if you look at their stock ownership, it's totally mixed from wealthy people all over the world also. So you can't think of these corporations as German or Chinese or French or American anymore. They're transnational or global in nature. So I think that has affected democracy because you have essentially the capitalist class, these people who design and run the world, walking away from the working class. You know, for many years we had a social contract, right? Better wages, more rights, and they were fought for certainly, but the system was flexible enough to allow it to happen. When you have another 1.5 billion workers in Russia and India and China and Africa join the labor force, screw the American workers, right? You no longer need them.
Right.
And when that happens, greater concentration of economic power leads to greater concentration of political power, and therefore the crisis of democracy.
How's it played out in the recent election? How's your theory working?
Well, pretty good, I think.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. The problem, of course, with the crisis in democracy is that with all crises, it can go either left or right. As we know from the Great Crisis, the Great Depression in the 1930s. And here and in parts of Europe, it's obviously going to the right. Although, you know, the Bernie Sanders campaign shows that there's also the possibility of it going in a progressive direction, I think the Democrats need to understand why they really lost the election, though. You know,
why do you think we lost the election?
35 years of neoliberalism that both the Democrats and the Republicans were advocates of. So we could talk about the Russian interference, and there was Russian interference, and we could talk about Conley and the FBI screwing Clinton in the last week. Yeah. But that's seeing the trees and not the forest.
Good point.
You know, the problem is that the Democrats and the Clintons have been associated with neoliberalism and globalization and Wall Street for 35 years. And there was no way she could walk away from that, even though she adopted some of Bernie's platform. It's, you know, too little too late in the eyes of millions of people. Yeah. I mean, I don't think the Democrats have really come to terms with that. I think that's why they're looking for all sorts of reasons why Hillary lost and should have won, you know, and she should have won huge, big.
Actually, I think more people have come to terms with it than people hear about, because these are the people who don't have a mic in front of them.
Good point.
I mean, I was a Bernie delegate to the convention. There were 1,900 of us in that gathering. all of those people, most of those people understand the concept, at least verbally, and attach it to actions of neoliberalism. And are trying desperately not to be called that themselves, simply by being an active person with the electoral practice. And that is kind of a tricky thing. When I read your book, it reminds me of, you know, in the 60s and 70s, we were, in fact, in revolutionary mode around the planet. And in the U.S., where, if we look at it now, we had so much less reason to be in revolutionary mode than we do today, given what you just said, the loss of good-paying jobs, basically the turning of back on the American worker for the last 20 years. Let me try and remember what my question was.
I got a few.
How do we make it so that people can take part without being critiqued by the left for taking part as we try and fix this system? It's easy, I mean, yeah, okay, so I'll leave it at that. How do people take part without being called neoliberals?
Or what's your prescription for building a mass movement?
I think actually Bernie Sanders was the only anti-neoliberal candidate, right? Because Trump was anti-global, but he wasn't anti-neoliberal. He didn't talk about austerity. He didn't talk about privatization. He didn't talk about you know, taxing the rich. None of that was on his program. So I think the Sanders campaign offers us a pathway into a truly mass movement. Because we see the possibilities out there. Part of that, though, is, of course, racial unity. You can't build an anti-neoliberal movement simply being blind to racism structurally in this country. So I think the question is race and class, not race and nation.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that's what Trump has been able to do. He's made it race and nationalism.
Right, right. That's a good...
Jerry Harris, let me ask you, I want to talk a little bit about populism again, both here and abroad. You know, to me that used to be a great word. You know, the prairie populists and going back into the late 1800s. And now it's kind of shifted to it's like suddenly the voice of the masses of people, populism, it is moving to the right. As you point out, not necessarily totally, we've got Bernie Sanders, but what about populism and worldwide? I'm not sure where I'm going with it, but it just, I like the word, but now it's used in a way where, ooh.
Again, I think there's left and right populism. And I think in some ways the mainstream media has given populism a bad name, because any mass movement that, you know, Chavez was a bad populist according to the mainstream media in Venezuela. Right, so anybody who appeals to the masses of people rather than an elite bubble in D.C. becomes a populist. And I'm not sure how the left repossesses that word, you know.
Maybe by studying history and, you know, having folks know history, which we're so ahistorical in this country right now, and there's no drive to get educated. On some of where our political routes started.
History dies rapidly in America.
Do you care to comment a little bit about Citizens United and the Koch brothers? How they fit into the deal?
Well, you know, it's too bad the left doesn't have a couple billionaires to help us out, you know, and to...
Doesn't Warren Buffett help a little, and there's another guy, there's a few rich guys,
Soros helps a little, but they don't really help the left. They help the left of center liberal sort of stuff, which is good. You know, I wouldn't put it down, but you know, the one thing that the right has in this country is a sector of the ruling class, and that gives it enormous power. The left doesn't have any sector of the ruling class. At best, it has some liberal allies.
Yeah, and like kind of computer companies out west, those guys, I'm not sure how favorable they are. Apple.
Well, one interesting thing I think from the election is to see what splits will occur among the elite, because many of them are now taking sustainability and the environment very seriously.
Right.
Even guys like Rubin, who was Secretary-Treasurer under Clinton, and Paulson, who was Secretary-Treasurer under George W. Bush, Bloomberg, they're not only talking about it, they're investing money in it, because they see it as a new path of accumulation and a new corporation. So that, I think, is going to clash head-on with Trump. And some of them are obviously upset around foreign policy. I mean, here you have a guy taking on the CIA and, you know, the security apparatus for his own benefit. I mean, so it will be an interesting 4 years, to say the least.
Jerry Harris, author of Global Capitalism, The Crisis for Democracy. Do you have any crystal ball skills, ability to see who might be a candidate for the who the Democrats might put up? I know Elizabeth Warren is making some moves right now. Your sense of where that's going to go?
I hope it's Warren and not Biden. You know, I mean, Biden is going to be another Clinton, except he's a white male. And he'll be 78.
Yeah, I don't think he'll run.
No,
So-
you won't.
I think he'll enjoy life outside of the fishbowl for a couple of years, and
He probably would have been elected had he run.
Yeah.
He might have been.
Do you think just the Putin connection is worrying a lot of people?
Yes.
Do you think Putin and Trump will go to war with China?
No. No, because Russia has deep economic ties with China, as the United States does. So, you know,
Yeah.
It's all intertwined, this
yeah,
stuff.
it's all intertwined. And, you know, everybody bashes China during the electoral period, and then it all goes away afterwards. What's interesting about Putin and Trump to me recently is Trump is taking a page from Putin's book when he attacks Boeing and Lockheed,
Yeah.
because that's exactly what Putin did. He chose individual oligarchs to jail or run out of the country, and all the other oligarchs got behind him. And it seems Trump is taking that strategy from him.
Very
Hit out a
interesting.
few individuals, scare the rest, and you know, one tweet and your stock prices are going to go down 18% in one day. That's scary to a lot of these guys.
Everything you're saying is scary to me.
So you want to come back and scare us some more and not too far off?
Well, this is a good one. Think the opposite, right? Because anything Trump does will have a contradictory reaction to it, and that's where we come in. That's where the base comes in, and the mass movement and the protest. So I'm looking for the social movements to grow. I'm looking for splits among the elites to grow. And I think within that there's a lot of opening for good progressive politics and united front politics if we can get over sectarianism and disunity and start working together.
That would be quite an accomplishment. Thanks a
Wow,
lot for
Jerry
coming out,
Harris.
Jerry.
Thank
We'll
you.
end on